The winter morning sunlight spilled across the quiet streets like a soft whisper, glowing against frosted windows and blank rooftops as if trying to comfort those who felt unseen. On that particular Christmas morning, the world looked bright and awake, but inside Kian Arlo's heart, something heavy pressed against him, an ache that had been building for months, maybe years, without him fully understanding how deep it ran. He stepped out of the small rented room he called home, the cold daytime air biting gently at his face, the sound of distant church bells echoing down the block. People walked past him with gift bags, laughter, plans, families waiting at home. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere, doing something meaningful, while Kian felt like he was moving through an invisible tunnel, watching happiness through glass. He didn't expect today to be any different, he just planned to survive it quietly. But fate had a way of opening a door when he least expected it, even when he wasn't brave enough to knock. If you're watching this and believe in kindness, healing, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Chronicles. It truly helps stories like this reach more hearts. Kian had always been the kind of person who tried to blend into the background. He grew up learning not to take up too much space, not to expect too much, and certainly not to ask for warmth he didn't think he deserved. His childhood was a long stretch of half-packed boxes, moving from one relative's home to another as adults argued about responsibilities and sacrifices that seemed to have no end. He learned early to carry his world alone, and as years passed, that loneliness didn't just follow him, it shaped him. By the time he was in his 20s, he had become comfortable with silence but at the same time deeply wounded by it. His days were simple, working as an assistant at a small stationery shop, walking home in the afternoon glow, eating simple meals, and sleeping early. It was a life without trouble, but also without connection, but people often crossed paths unexpectedly, and sometimes those moments stitched the tears in a person's soul without warning. That's how he met Maren Hale. She was the niece of his shop owner, filling in temporarily for her uncle during the holiday season. She arrived on a bright, crisp morning wearing a warm beige coat and a loose scarf that danced around her with every step she took. Her hair was tied up casually, and her smile seemed to bring the whole store to life. Kian noticed how easily she talked to customers, how she laughed at their jokes, how she remembered their preferences without effort. She carried a gentle warmth, like sunlight filtering through curtains, a presence that made people want to linger. Compared to her, Kian felt like a shadow. He kept his distance, answered when spoken to, and tried not to reveal too much of himself, but Maren was the type who noticed the quiet ones. She saw the way Kian avoided eye contact, the carefulness in his movements, the way he held his notebook at lunch as though it were a shield. She started with small things, like offering him half her sandwich or leaving a cup of hot tea on the counter near him without making a big deal out of it. She wasn't trying to fix anything, she simply made space for him. And slowly, Kian felt something unfamiliar. He felt seen. The days that followed created a rhythm he didn't realize he craved. They restocked the shelves together, arranged display cards near the window, and shared conversations that weren't really personal but still softened the distance between them. Maren often talked about her dreams, her love for art, her hope to open a community studio, her belief that people deserved places where they could breathe freely. Kian listened quietly, absorbing every word, wondering when he had stopped dreaming for himself. Their connection deepened not through dramatic moments, but through the simplicity of being present together in the daylight hours that once felt painfully long. Yet, even as a fragile friendship grew, something inside Kian kept holding back. Loneliness had become his identity, and giving it up felt like stepping off a cliff without knowing if anyone would catch him. So he built invisible walls, convincing himself that people like Maren belonged to brighter worlds, not the dim corners he occupied. Christmas approached quickly, and the shop grew busier. Customers bought colored pens, wrapping paper, handmade journals, and little ornaments shaped like stars. Decorations hung across the ceiling, white paper lanterns glowing softly during the day, making everything feel festive. But every time someone mentioned holiday plans, Kian felt a sharp reminder of his empty room waiting at the end of each shift. On Christmas Eve, the shop closed early. The skies were clear, the sunlight gentle but bright, illuminating the sidewalks where children played with snow dust piled against the curbs. As they cleaned up the counter, Maren looked at Kian with a softness that held something unspoken. She picked up a small ceramic ornament shaped like a lantern and held it up, the light catching its glossy surface. Then she asked the question that stirred something deep within him, a question he had never expected to hear, because no one had ever cared enough to ask. She asked him what his wish was, not in a playful way, but with sincerity, as if the answer truly mattered. He froze. For a moment he thought about giving a safe answer, something light-hearted. But something in her eyes, gentle, curious, hopeful, made him tell the truth he had never spoken aloud. He confessed that his wish was simple, fragile, and a little painful. He wished he wasn't alone. The words left his chest like a slow exhale, and once they were out, he felt both exposed and strangely relieved. Marin didn't react dramatically. She didn't offer pity or promises. She simply placed the ornament beside him and stayed there silently for a moment, letting him know that his truth didn't scare her. Then she told him softly that he didn't have to carry that wish by himself. After closing, she invited him to walk through the holiday market in the town square. The daytime sky was bright and light blue, streaked with soft clouds. Vendors sold warm pastries, handmade crafts, knitted scarves, and small toys. Children chased each other between the booths, their laughter rising like small fireworks. Marin guided Kian to a stand selling cinnamon rolls, insisting he try one. They sat on a bench near the fountain, sunlight brushing across their faces while the air smelled of vanilla and fresh bread. For the first time in a long time, Kian felt like he belonged in the world instead of observing it from a distance. As they walked through the stalls, Marin would sometimes point at something and laugh, and other times she would simply walk beside him in comfortable silence. He found himself speaking more than usual, sharing bits about his childhood, his fear of disappointing people, his habit of hiding because it felt safer. To his surprise, she listened without judgment. She talked about her own past too, how she struggled with feeling like she wasn't doing enough, how she often doubted her choices. It was in those moments Kian realized something beautiful. Loneliness didn't just mean being without people. Sometimes it meant being surrounded by people but never feeling understood. But here, with her, he finally felt understood. Over the next few hours, as daylight continued to stretch across the sky, warming the cobblestone paths and reflecting on store windows, something in Kian began to shift. It wasn't sudden or dramatic. It was slow and steady, like winter snow melting under sunlight. He started to see that maybe he hadn't been unworthy of connection, maybe he had just been waiting for the right person to draw him out of the shadows. When they reached the edge of the square, where a decorated evergreen tree stood tall with white ribbons, Marin stopped and looked at him again. She didn't need to say anything, her presence alone told him he wasn't invisible. He realized that today, his wish hadn't been dismissed. It had been heard. They parted ways that afternoon, with plans to meet again. As Kian walked home under the soft daylight, he felt a fullness in his chest, a gentle glow that reminded him of hope. His room, usually quiet and cold, felt different when he entered. He placed the small ceramic ornament Marin had given him on his table. It wasn't expensive or fancy, but it carried meaning. It symbolized a moment someone saw him clearly. The days that followed weren't magical or perfect. There were moments when Kian still doubted himself, moments when fear tried to pull him back into familiar isolation. But things did change. Marin continued visiting the shop even after her uncle returned. They spent afternoons together exploring the town, drinking tea in the cafe near the old library, talking about small things and big hopes. For the first time, loneliness didn't feel permanent. It felt like something he could walk away from, step by step, as long as he wasn't walking alone. As Christmas week stretched into New Year's, Kian understood that his wish hadn't been about having a crowd around him. It had been about finding someone who cared enough to stay. And Marin did. Not out of obligation, but because she genuinely valued him. Near the end of the story, if this touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, and share the video. It helps more people find comfort, hope, and healing through these stories. By the time December came to a gentle close, Kian found himself standing beneath the same bright winter sky where everything had begun. He wasn't the same person anymore. He wasn't invisible. He wasn't carrying the weight of silence alone.